right, y'all. Are y'all ready?
You're still awake?
You waited all day to have two black women on the stage.
Hello.
Yes. You're welcome. We are here. It is the show you have waited for. So, first and foremost, thank you all so much for being here today. It has been a fabulous day. And I just want to take a moment to thank all of the fantastic speakers, panelists, and for all the fine folks here at the Cooper Union who've done such a great job hosting us here. All day we have been focused on these big ideas and big topics. How do we rebuild our sense of community and create an economy that is working for all of us? But more so than that, how do we make sure that we are talking about prosperity and moralism together, not separately? And what are the obstacles that are standing in our way? And at the end of all of this, I hope that you all are taking away a couple of core questions. Why is power distributed the way it is in our society? How does inequality implicate each of us? And why it is our responsibility to build something better. So I am thrilled to be in conversation with Dr. Tressie Cottom. And just so y'all know, we are going to have the conversation we want to have.
Yes.
And we're going to have the conversation we've been having all day.
I was just about to say, if you feel like you're coming into the middle of a conversation, you are.
Yeah, we're going to have a conversation we've been having all day.
We have been backstage cutting up something terrible, and I've been having the time of my life. I am so thrilled to be here with seriously. We've been having a good time.
We've had a really great time.
Yep.
So, apologies, not apologies in advance.
That's right.
And you are welcome in advance.
Yes.
So, let's get to it. So one of the ideas that I've been drawn to in my own work as I talk about black women in the economy is the ideal of deservedness. The notion that you have to check this or that box to earn trust or a seat at the table here in America. Thank you, Malcolm.
I know, we like little Malcolm. Hey, Malcolm. So cute. Sorry.
Okay, y'all.
Yes.
Let us behave, okay? We're ready.
Yes.
Okay, so we're gonna start again. Okay, I'm gonna perch up. You ready?
Yes.
Okay, let's do it. Okay, scene 2. Let's
Boom.
go. Okay. One of the ideas that I've been drawn to in my own work is the ideal of deservedness. The notion that you have to check this or that box in order to earn a seat at the table. As you've written, we assign stigma to everything, from poverty to obesity, and it's not just social or cultural. It informs policy and determines outcomes. Why is the ideal of deservedness so entrenched in American identity, and how might we do the difficult work of untangling it and unwinding it?
Yeah, we have this big story in our culture. I mean, it might be even more American than the story, the formal story that we tell about the founding fathers and the narrative of, we know the story, Columbus, Pilgrims, so forth and so forth, right? So we got, our founding myths, but the sort of counter narrative to that, what those myths make legitimate, are the stories that we take away about our place in those founding myths and what it legitimizes. And it legitimizes the idea of meritocracy, that if you do well in America, it is because you deserved to do well. And so what happens is that people who do well for all kinds of reasons that we are very familiar with in this room, that we've been talking about all day, because of inherited wealth, inherited privilege, unearned, unchecked power, and monopoly. You can do well for all kinds of reasons that have nothing to do with deservedness, but we've tied up the idea of morality and ethics in sort of the visible aspects, what we can see of wealth and power and privilege and success. That, of course, legitimizes the idea that there must always be someone who isn't doing well. Right? So it legitimizes social inequality, it legitimizes poverty, because poverty, as we well know, is a choice we make. It's a policy choice. It's a cultural choice we make. We could certainly have a society that is organized differently. That's part of the work that we are doing here today, that so many people in this room work on as a matter of professional and personal commitment. These are choices that we make. When we choose then to have poverty, to have social inequality, to have houselessness, to have people who can't access health care, when we make those choices, we rationalize and legitimize them by saying, well, someone has to not be good. Someone has to not deserve to be covered under the social contract. When, of course, we can rewrite the social contract to include everyone, but we've got this narrative that there have to be winners and there have to be losers, that, of course, are just deeply embedded in our fault lines around gender and race and class and citizenship and ability in this country. And so we don't want to let go of that for lots of reasons. And I think it gets in the way, and we can talk about how that is, those are the big fault lines. I think when I'm talking to a room, however, of people who fundamentally believe mostly in the same thing, I always want to put a finer point on this, because I think we have to hold ourselves accountable to the way we have let those narratives, even when we mostly agree with each other, in progressive or leftist circles, wherever you find yourself there on that spectrum, we still have some of that, right? We still have some of that embedded in our own belief systems. So, like, let's forget about the other side, whatever you think the other side is. Let's talk in-house, right? We still come to the table agreeing, for example, on ideas about, oh yeah, inequality's bad, but we don't have enough, so we gotta make some trade-offs, Tressie, right? That is about a narrative we've accepted that someone has to not deserve to be included, and I just reject the premise.
So let's lean into that narrative and the rejecting it, because I know you're right. When we get together, we pat ourselves on the back and say, okay, we're not as bad as that group.
Yeah.
So how do we stop holding each other complicit in allowing these narratives to continue to perpetuate if we know they're not true? We know that there does not have to be winners and losers. We know that there is enough for all of us to have whatever the American dream is that we may want it to be. Why don't we challenge each other? Is it because we want to be kept comfortable? Is it because we don't want to be challenged ourselves?
Yes.
Why do we let this continue even within our culture of like minds?
Yes, and I think that's exactly the way to think of it, because it is so hostile out there doing the work when people disagree with you. It is hostile out there when you think you're doing something good and people paint your good works as self-serving or as, antithetical to their values, and you think that you're doing the right thing. It's so hostile out there that when you're with like-minded people, you resist making that space challenging. We want to like each other, and we want to be liked by each other, and so we won't hold each other accountable to the spaces where we're saying, listen, we agree, and I like you, and I want you here, but this is getting in the way of us doing the best right thing. I was speaking with someone earlier who reminded me of something, and this is getting ready to sound so self-serving. I promise you it's not. It's just timely. I was talking, Merrimack, if you're out there, this is your fault. We were talking at lunch, and she said, reminded me of a story. I was on a panel once with Angela Davis, and she had just come from having a talk where, I think like a lot of activists who've been at it a long time, the language had gotten away from her, it had gotten out ahead of her. And none of us have been there, of course. We're all always hip. We're always in the pocket. And so in between her last talk and this talk, some younger activists were holding Angela to account because she hadn't used fully inclusive language about women and people who give birth. And in between those two talks, I watched Angela Davis, a person who I thought, who I think most of us would agree can make legitimate claims of saying, I've done enough, leave me alone. Instead chose to start our conversation there that time to say, I just want to take a moment here to say, I've learned since the last time. I want to be really deliberate about how I use the language this time, practice saying the way she wanted to say it, acknowledge to the audience that she'd learned and done better and moved forward. And I think of that and I go, if Angela Davis can still be called in, held to account, somebody who's, place in a movement is unquestioned. I think all of us have some space to do that. Learning to do it is harder, and I don't say that easily. Like I'm not saying that it's easy. I'm saying that it's worth it. We don't achieve any of this, for example, if you want to subsume issues of gender to class. If you want to say, yeah, we'll get to the race stuff once we get over this labor stuff. And if you want to, we're just not going to get there if we don't understand that when people are saying, we need to be here too, and this is what that looks like, we're on the same side, but this is what that looks like, you're just not going to get there, especially not, I think, today. Everybody is rightfully empowered to be part of this moment. And you've got to take that seriously, I think, if you're going to make some meaningful difference.
So it sounds like what you're saying, grace covers all, which is a conversation we were having
Got it,
earlier.
my PK.
Yes, we were talking about that earlier.
That's right.
And what you said about being called in with love.
Yes.
I think so many times we leave that out of the equation. Yeah. And I think a lot of times we leave the fact that we are community out of the equation. So if we're working towards the same end goal, why the hostility? And what does that look like if we really are calling each other in with love and recognizing that we are community?
Yeah.
So thank you for that. I think that's a beautiful lesson for all of us, and especially if it's coming from Queen Mother Angela Davis.
Again, yeah. Somebody who could have easily dismissed the parts of the movements that aren't as central, didn't have really any power they could hold over, and instead chose to model something else. I say to myself, I hope I wake up one day and I still have the energy and the wherewithal to model saying I was wrong. Yeah.
So in one of your writings, we've been talking all day about reimagining our social contract and democracy. And in one of your op-eds, you write about why we should keep our eyes on the South.
Yes.
I am a daughter of the South, so I definitely believe that we should keep our eyes on the South. Yeah. And so what is it that we are missing, and what are the lessons that we could be learning if we would look to the South rather than putting our eyes on all these other places?
Oh, goodness, yes. And listen, it is not that we have limited vision. It's not say that we take our eyes off the ball. And, California, we're amazing activists and policy and scholars and artists and come from and have done amazing work, and amazing work is happening in so many places. It is saying that I think we have a fixed idea in our national discourse where so many of us reside when we are working out in New York and DC and I think larger power centers in the country. We tend to get a fixed idea of the South, and we see it every time election season runs around, or we see it every time there's a natural disaster or there's some political or economic crisis in the South. This idea of like, it's so complicated there, why don't we just write this off? Like, why don't we just, why doesn't Texas just cede, Why don't we just cut South Carolina out? And I go, one, you'd never win another presidential election, so good luck with that. Get rid of South Carolina if you want to. I'd like to see your path forward. But also, I point out that in the South, it is what progressives have said they want for the rest of this country. The narrative, now, it's up to us to say whether or not the story we've been writing and selling to people, we've actually meant it. But if I'm going to take us at our word, the story we've been writing is that we can do a multicultural democracy. So I got news for you. Do you know where multicultural democracies are being acted out every day in this country? In the South. And so if you think it's possible, show me. If you want me to believe in the vision that you're selling, show me. And you're going to have to do that in the South. You're going to have to do that in a place where the narratives about immigration and race and gender are not easy. And you're going to have to do it in a place where people are deeply sophisticated in their political narratives and political messaging, far more sophisticated than they get credit for in the national discourse, of which my colleagues, I think, are deeply responsible for. We don't cover the South with nuance. right? And we don't give them credit for understanding their own political landscape. But when you do listen to them carefully, as we do as daughters of the South, and you give them credit for being witnesses to their own lived reality, you understand how much they do get about the distance between what they see in the South and what they see across the rest of the country. And so if you're going to sell a progressive vision, if you're going to demonstrate that it works, you're going to have to do it in a place where all of those fault lines we were just talking about are real and present and tangible in people's lives.
Why do you think that we are so quick to disregard the South, and why do you think that we don't recognize the unique nuances?
Oh, because Black people and poor people are there.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah. I mean, it can get more complicated.
No. It's no
Okay.
more complicated than that. No.
But
no.
really, because it's easy. It's easy.
Yeah.
It's always been easy. I think it's both easy and inconvenient. You know.
But if it's, so I definitely get that it's easy, and I definitely get that it's inconvenient. But what we're doing, the cost of that ease and the cost of that inconvenience is the price that all of us are suffering.
That's right.
So why let's not just do the work necessary so that we can get a different outcome?
Yeah. Well, you know, it's just like trying to say, why don't we just do anything that we know we should do? I know. Why didn't I go to the gym this morning before I left? I don't know. No, because it's hard, because it challenges, I think it does challenge our sense that we have a handle on things.
Yeah.
Because the South will challenge you.
I think it goes back to that comfort that you were talking about
that's
earlier,
right.
and not wanting to be uncomfortable. And it also goes to that narrative. So if I have been believing this one particular narrative about this place my entire life, to now be challenged on that, what does that mean if I have to go about changing my narrative?
That's exactly right. We will do a lot as human beings. One of the great stories about human beings is how most of us will trend towards inertia. And so even well-meaning people, this is not about ill intent, but people will do a lot to not give up the story that has governed a lot of their actions, even if the story's better. Even if it's and it is, by the way, I'm not telling you you're trading in a story for a harder story. The story in the South is good. I travel, is it complicated? Yes. Is it nuanced? Absolutely. But it is an exciting, vibrant, alive story. It's amazing. So you're gonna get a better story. But even then, we tend to trend towards that inertia of the story we already know. It's the story we know how to sell. It's the story we have invested in. And so there's a better story waiting for us, I think, out there if we challenge ourselves. But the thing we have to do first and foremost is challenge ourselves. Yeah.
And that's the hard work. We got to take off the
is.
mask and challenge ourselves and have those conversations and trend towards something differently.
Yeah.
And we don't want to do that because, because we don't.
Yeah.
All right. Womp womp. So we're going to shift it a little differently because we know the challenges, but there's also hope. And there's this idea in both of the work that we do of leaning into hope. And so I subscribe to the words of Octavia Butler, who said, "All that you touch, you change. All that you change, changes you." I find myself profoundly changed by the work that I have had an opportunity to do. And I wonder how you found yourself changing over the years as you have become a true leader and trailblazer and truth teller on so many issues.
Oh, well, thank you, first of all. I hope I'm changing all the time. I'm actually really afraid of not changing. I might have the opposite of that inertia problem, and I don't know if that's good or bad, but I am. I think that the times, especially the moment, our political moment, is calling us to do a lot. And I'm really afraid that I won't be ready for the moment. And so I'm always looking to people to go, okay, what's happening out there? What are people doing? And trying to take in information and stories and data to make sure that I'm aware, if nothing else. And I think I just have a sense of just wanting to be prepared. You know, someone told me early in my academic career, my mentor at the time said, you know, don't try to predict the future. He said, listen, social scientists are notoriously bad at that. Honestly, that's for artists. Artists predict it. We don't get into that. But what you can do is to try to do work that is good and hope that it will be there when the times are ready for it, right? And that's all I hope to do. I'm trying to write into an archive, think into an archive that I hope will be rich enough and sustainable enough that when the times call for it, it'll be ready. I hope I maintain enough hope to do a work, because doing work is fundamentally hopeful. Creating anything is hopeful. We can talk, and we do. We're, you know, culturally we tend to be very pessimistic, you know, because we're supposed to be sophisticated. But anybody who does work that is thinking about a tomorrow is hopeful. I hate to tell you, but you're optimistic. And so it's my act of optimism is to do work that I hope will just be a step out ahead of me. And I think I've changed in that I accept that I may not always be there with it, right? I've tried to divorce my ego from it, just do the best I can, knowing I may not see what's coming around the corner. I used to be obsessed with trying to see what was coming. Like, okay, am I ready? Now, I just try to do the best I can right now, trust the process, and trust that other people, that y'all are doing that too. That was the big thing, that it isn't all on me. Telling one big story, there's no such thing. Getting one story right, getting one thing accurate. Everybody else is doing it too. And so if I did miss it, if I did have this spot, you know, if I did have this blind spot, somebody else is working. Trust.
Oh, I love that trust, and I love how you mentioned, you know, making sure you're putting into the archives, and it's really about legacy, and that's movement building and thinking about the work that you're doing as a seed.
Hope so.
That will manifest other actions.
Yeah.
So I love how you say you hope so.
I hope so.
You,
Yeah.
you don't know so?
No. I mean, do you ever know? I think about the things I've stumbled on in my life. That person never imagined me coming behind them and, you know, finding their book or their piece of art or their whatever, and it totally moved me to do something. And so that's what I'm hoping. Like, you know, I won't know, but I hope so.
I know so. You're a culture shifter. I
Oh,
know
thank
so.
you.
So yeah, so let's own
No
that.
for both of us. I appreciate it. I do.
No, yeah, definitely. I know so. Because, you know, it really is about, because it's seeds, and it's what you're planting. And I told you earlier, like I remember first reading your work years ago, and it really talking about how you center the needs of college students in the two-year system into the conversation. And that has led me to think about my work and making sure that I'm centering the needs of mothers into the conversation. So it's a no-so. So your seed is already bearing fruit. So
Thank you,
yeah,
girl.
so, of course. All right, so since you've joined the New York Times, you've written about a variety of issues, from the blondes
Who are still mad at me,
to,
but it's okay.
it's okay, to Bama Rush, to Ted
Also
Lasso.
still mad at me. Also okay.
Are those Olympic people mad at you? No.
Actually, yes. Well, no, kinda. You know what happened with this? I do think I have this thing. People, they get mad. But the Ozempic piece, I think, was that people were. There were the angry letters with that one were interesting because they were angry, but they couldn't figure out why. So they've written me what they, and I know better than they do why they're angry, right? But they're very long, their letters, and it's because they don't know why they're angry. And what they're angry about is that they have felt empathy for fat people who they are not supposed to feel empathy for. Because they keep going, but you explained that, but still, okay, well, Dea, you explained that, but still, and they're arguing with themselves and they think they're arguing with me, but they're arguing with themselves. And I think and hope that one of the things that I do is that that's what I think I do. I want to make it hard for you to settle into your taken for granted positions on who it is safe to stigmatize. If I make it hard for you to have a knee-jerk reaction, I think I have done my job. Because in our knee-jerk reactions are the things that we have never excavated about what we actually believe. Those are the places where we have inherited and taken onto ourselves our ideas, but you don't know if they're yours or not, right? That's the point of stigmatization, categorization, ostracization, othering people. You don't know if you actually hate poor people. You don't know if you actually hate fat people. You know other people do, right? And I think there can be ways, not for everybody, but I'm not trying to reach everybody. I'm trying to reach the person who can be moved. And if you are angry enough to find my email, which by the way is hard to do, and you get to me, it is because you were unsettled. You couldn't figure out why you believe what you believe. I think I've already won. So I don't worry about the big, long emails because I know you're just trying to figure out, I thought I believed this, and you made me not believe it for a moment, and I'm angry. And that's all I want to do, because if you can change your mind about that, imagine what else you can change your mind about.
It's that narrative shifting and that internal work. So, I love how you did that. Using Ozempic and blunts and Bama Rush to get to the hard part. Oh, I love it.
Go.
No, that's a culture shifter. I love it. I love that. So we have time for one more question, as I was seeing the hand of God over there. So thank you, hand of God. All right, so one more question to close out the programming. Your work is, and I think you may agree, not always sunny, but it's always truthful.
I'll go with that. I like that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. You are, to put it mildly, very direct about the flaws at the core of American society. So I want to land on one simple question.
Okay.
What gives you hope?
Okay. This one always stumps me because, again, we're not supposed to be hopeful, right? I'm supposed to be a wizened, grizzled, old scholar writer who doesn't want to be bothered. But instead, the sun comes out and I go, well, I'll try again. It is hard to be completely hopeless when you teach. That's why I try to keep a class in my rotation. I try to teach because it's hard work and it blows my schedule to smithereens and all of that. But you stand in that classroom and I watch people do the thing that everybody in the discourse says is impossible. I watch people be vulnerable. I watch people make mistakes and not die. And I watch them change. So I know it happens. I see it every day. And I gotta think then, if it can happen there, it's possible, and that gives me a lot of hope. My friends have said that I am a happier person when I teach. So I've taken sabbaticals before, and they were like, don't do that again. Apparently, I'm terrible when I don't teach. And it made me reflect on why that is. I think I missed that. And so teaching gives me a lot of hope. And increasingly these days, seeing people do that outside of the classroom also gives me a lot of hope. There are a lot of wonderful initiatives happening across the country. One, I'm just gonna shout out, happening in my own backyard in North Carolina, called the Night School Bar, that is just trying to make humanistic classes and courses available to all on a, ability to pay basis. And I love this idea of people learning how to think about life's big questions together in spaces that don't have anything to do with a degree or credit hours or anything like that, because I do think that is a tonic for the lack of critical thinking that defines so much of our political and public life. And so that makes me hopeful.
Thank you. This conversation has been a highlight of my week, so thank you.
Same
Thank
here.
you. All right.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, the
Thank you,
Dr.
everybody.
Tressie Cottom. So yes.
And my friend Aisha. Thank you,